Hello and welcome to another episode of The Lion's Den. I'm Toby Bennett from Black Crow Gaming, and this is an exciting one because I was going to do it last week, but it turns out I was really ill. You can probably still hear it in my voice, but since then, I managed to come third at a GT. And I've done a post about not playing my list, don't play my list. I've also shaved as well. Someone might have an interview tomorrow, but for reasons. For reasons that sounds really shady. For the reason that I'm interviewing for a new job. That's what I'm doing. Um, anyway, let's talk about the Inner Circle companions. And then what I really want to do, I had a comment in the last video going, "Hey, like you've done Death Through Nights, but like Inner Circle companions are really cool. So do we get to hear about them? Like, what's the best use for them?" And I'm really keen on this because they are gorgeous models. Like the sculpts are stunning. They're very dynamic. They're interesting. They mix a bit of both Primaris and Firstborn. There's so much lore behind them instead of the forest. I think that's awesome. Like it's so cool to see that on tabletop. So I'm really pleased with that. And that's why I want to talk about how they could be good. I will bring this with the disclaimer that I currently do not play them. I know that some people do, and some people will swear by them. But currently, for me, they don't quite fit the role that I need them to fit. But I'll talk more to that when we go to the weaknesses slide. So first of all, best uses for these Inner Circle companions. So high potential damage output. We got it out in the end. The Inner Circle companions, because they are that either 622 profile or 621 with sustained, and obviously the 622 comes with lethal as well. Sustained 2 on the 1 damage version. There is a lot of potential damage output. They've got a lot of attacks going in, 5 attacks on the 1 damage and 4 attacks on the 2. So they can really punch up. Like they can really chop things to pieces, especially when you put them in that brick of 6. 180 points is expensive, but they are very choppy and very killy. And because they get that +1 to hit going into characters, they almost kind of ape Deathwing Knights in the way that that 2 to hit is so important for the Deathwing Knights. And being able to hit on 2s for them as well, it just increases their consistency at being a nasty damage dealer. So I'm a really big fan of that high potential damage output. They're also super good when they're led by characters. So obviously they do get their innate -1 to hit when they're led, which is really very solid. Then they also they just pair very well with a lot of the Space Marine characters. So, for example, some of the best characters like the Judicia, Azrael. The Librarian is not probably considered one of the better characters, but it's a really good character for ICCs because it gives them an invuln. And you get more bonuses by adding them in. Obviously, that is increasing their points cost. And that's something that we really have to factor in when we're doing that. But yeah, they're super good when they're led by more characters. So I really like that. So they're Tacitus armor or Tacitus or whatever the fuck you want to call it. I don't care. So they're able to go in most transports that aren't the Rhino or the Razorback. Mainly they're going in an Impulsor. That's probably the most important one that they're going to be going into. Just to give them that extra 3 inches of movement on maybe their go turn, keep them safe because obviously survivability is a bit of an issue for them. There's plenty of reasons why you might want to take a transport with them, and it's great that they fit in them. Just unfortunately, obviously, that again does amp up those points, which can cause some issues of how much you're sinking into one particular unit. So that, as we've kind of already touched on, that killing flexibility of the sweep versus the strike, they're not limited to just doing one role. They're able to do both roles quite efficiently, whether they're going into hordes or if they're going into other space marines. They'll usually kill most infantry that they go into. But then with the strike, they also have those lethal hits, which allows them to punch up into other sort of vehicles or monsters, and particularly solid in Gladius, where you can give them that +1 to wound in combat via Lance. So there's definitely some good killing flexibility with your Inner Circle companions as well. Finally, in terms of their best use, they're actually a really good answer to Deathwing Knights because they're strength 6, they're winning on 3s, they're sustained 2 with 5 attacks each, -2 to put them on their invulnerable save, and it's just a boatload of dice. Now, the only bad thing about it is that most Deathwing Knights aren't going to be led, so you will be hitting on 3s, or at least they probably shouldn't be led. Go watch my other video if you want to know why I don't think they should be led. Yeah, so they're super good at killing those -1 damage units because they just go, right, here is a ton of dice. You can't deal with all of this. Enjoy. So if you're going into a lot of Death Guard with, what are they called? The Terminators with the Reapers, Blight Shroud or whatever they're called. Death Shroud, probably Death Shroud. Yeah, it's Death Shroud. Or is it Blight Lord? It's Death Shroud or Blight Lord. I think it's Death Shroud. With the Magic Boy and Terminator armor, which gives them -1 damage. This could be a really good way around that, because obviously they are toughness 6, and this gets around -1 damage just by going, hey, here's a boatload of dice. You're probably going to fail some of these. So yeah, that's a really good way to deal with those -1 damage units. But we must take the rough with the smooth, and that brings us on to the weakness. They are just standard marine bodies. They are toughness 4. They've got a 3-up save, and they don't have an innate invulnerable save. That's not good. We've all seen how easily that dies. At 90 points, it's not so bad if one of them dies. Obviously, if 3 of them die. But at 180 plus character, maybe plus transport, like that's where we start going, oh, okay, that's problematic. That's a problematic amount of points just to sink into a standard marine body, where its best survivability is only a -1 to hit if it's led. It's only got a 6-inch movement, which if it's foot slogging, ain't good. You can make it work with things like Advance and Charge, with Stormlance or Gladius. However, they are quite slow. They might need a transport. They can't deep strike. If you rapid ingress them, you can do that. Don't think it's a good thing to do, but it's a thing. As I say, 30 points a model is not cheap for ultimately T4, 3-up save with no invuln. And yes, they do have 3 wounds, which is good, but unfortunately the meta is very focused around killing things with 3 wounds. The -1 to hit is brilliant into orcs until some of those tank busters hit and ruin your day by one-shotting your lovely, lovely Inner Circle companions. And then finally, the abilities are actually not that good. It's a -1 to hit if they're led, and a +1 to hit character units. Like that's pretty naff considering like what other units have. So like Impact Mortals from Jump Pack Intercessors at 90 points. Trying to think of another good example for something at 90 points. Anything out of Eldari that's 90 points. I'm pretty sure Howling Banshees are like 90 points, and they are significantly better. Admittedly, they're made of paper, but to be perfectly honest, these guys aren't any less made of paper. Like when you actually consider what's going to be shooting them. Sure, they're not as scared as a bolter of a bolter than as a banshee is, but you know that a massed bolter fire will still kill them. And then finally, I just don't think that -1 to hit is good. The +1 to hit, I just feel like they should just have a 2-up anyway, like a 2-up to hit anyway. It doesn't make sense to me that these guys are meant to be like the best of the best of the Tacitus bunch, but they hit on 3s. To me, that doesn't make a huge amount of sense. I get it for game balance, but like, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of their abilities. I would like to see something change with them. I think that would be positive for this unit to have just like a slightly more interesting ability than -1 to hit and +1 to hit. Next, in terms of leading the Inner Circle Companions, here is a list of some of the best units that you can take to lead those Inner Circle Companions, and I'm going to break down why. Now, the first two, it's very much the same reason. It gives them a 4-up invulnerable save, and anything that increases their survivability is going to be really, really key. So, Azrael and Librarian both give a 4-up invulnerable save. I'm just going to have some Lemsip because I have a horrible cold. The Azrael and the Librarian can increase their survivability, which is super important. And a 4-up invuln can just kind of mess with your opponent's maths in terms of what they need to put into you, what they can plan. Because otherwise, like 3-up save, 3 wounds is a super easy profile to kill. But then you add in -1 to hit and a 4-up invuln. That's difficult. Azrael seems like a very natural leader for Inner Circle Companions because he is incredibly choppy himself. He gives sustained hits, which pairs really nicely with their strike attack. Obviously, a bit of a nombo with their sweep, but who cares? And then also gives them some mortal wound protection, which is really nice. However, the reason that this doesn't often combo as nicely is because of that survivability again. And you want your Inner Circle Companions to be that frontline unit that charges in, kills as much as it can, and then dies. And ultimately, you don't want to do that with Azrael. You want to keep him alive as long as possible so you can sort of wring every last CP out of him that you can get. Because CP is always brilliant regardless of what's going on. So I think it's really, really important to like maybe go, in a vacuum, Azrael is the best leader. In game, he probably isn't because his role needs to be different. So next we'll come on to the Librarian, which actually fits this role very nicely. It's a lot cheaper at 65 points. And it still gives them that invuln. It also gives them a 4-up feel no pain to psychic attacks, which is real nice if you've got like Grey Knights or Thousand Suns in the meta, all that kind of stuff. Like sometimes that feel no pain can actually just pop off. And it can be super useful, so that's quite nice. Also, that smite and the D3 damage full sword is not bad. Like it's not great, but for 65 points and giving the unit that's quite squishy and invuln, I'm quite happy to bring him. So Librarian is often my choice. That is very much a playstyle that I choose to do that for. But I think it's worth bearing in mind that personally I find the Librarian the best option. Now, another best option is the Judicia, and that's pretty self-explanatory. You give your super stabby combat unit fights first, which is pretty good. And if you want to sort of bait your opponent into charging you and hide these guys behind a wall and then heroically intervene and ruin your opponent's day, then this is a damn good way to do it. The Judicia is also just very, very killy. It's got good damage output. It puts a lot of units in the dirt. And it puts a lot of characters in the dirt, which can be very important as well. It doesn't increase their survivability, which to me is a problem. But it also kind of does because it increases their survivability to combat. But in my experience, most of the time people just wanted to shoot them anyway. I've played with both a couple of times. I've ended up always going back to the Librarian whenever I've gone, okay, maybe I'll listen to other people for a minute and I'll play the Judicia. I play him for like a tournament and I just wish I'd had a Librarian. And yes, Harley, if you are watching, you are mostly to blame for that because of your horrible 30 Terminators out of Grey Knights, just one-shotting my Judicia and 6 blob of Inner Circle Companions with the Librarian Terminator ability, which was very upsetting, but also very funny in hindsight, especially with the fact that usually I play them with a Librarian, but that week I wasn't. It's for me, it's a toss-up between the Librarian and the Judicia. I think with some people's playstyle, the Judicia will be better. With my personal playstyle of that aggression and proactivity, I think the Librarian is better. It's find out your own style and work out what's best for you. Next, I think the chaplain could actually be a really cool option. Gives them mortal wound protection. Gives them +1 to wound, which at strength 6, like that's pretty big. They're wounding everything apart from T12 on 4s at worst. Like, that's nice. Are they still not very survivable? Yeah. Can you force your opponent to shoot elsewhere? I don't know. I'm not sold on it, but like it's an option. Is probably the best thing I can say. Like, it makes them more killy. If your job with them is to run them into your opponent's line, and you can feasibly get them into units that will mean that they'll trade up, then yeah, sure, investigate the chaplain. Like, he's solid. Otherwise, I don't think he's worth it. Then finally, as a bit of a rogue choice, I've gone with Ezekiel because he gives an extra attack. And he also battle shocks opponents' units, which is just like, it's cute abilities where he's also quite powerful himself. So I'm like, well, why not? We're talking about increasing the damage output of Inner Circle Companions. Like, if you're going for a YOLO charge with them, why not? Like, why is that not a good thing for Ezekiel? And also, he's still on a 25mm base. He can sneak through them walls, which is obviously a really nice and cute little trick. And if anyone wants to question that, I will have to go and get the person that did the lovely geometric drawings of 25mm bases and 1-inch gaps in walls. Obviously, this does not apply if you're playing WTC rules of the extra engagement range on walls. But yeah, it's a thing. It's fun. I really like that. So yeah, Ezekiel. Like, maybe you want to play Ezekiel. Maybe this is just your excuse to play Ezekiel, and that's fine. It doesn't always have to be about winning. Obviously, this series is kind of all about winning and like getting the best out of your army. But like, screw it. Like, sometimes it's fun to play our specific characters. So we've kind of touched on a lot of this already. But how do you boost those Inner Circle Companions? Now, Advance and Charge is probably the easiest, simplest, and most basic, because it means that they're going to get into combat faster. It mitigates their weakness of only having a 6-inch movement. And it's just solid. Like, Advance and Charge is just great with any combat army, right? So definitely this is something that you should look at. Obviously, you can get that from Stormlance. You can get that from Gladius. Not sure where else you can get it, but because they're not Raven Wings, so they can't get it in Company of Hunters. But yeah, it's really good. As we touched on as we were discussing the Chaplain, +1 to wound is super good for these guys because it means they wound basically everything in the game on either 2s or 4s. And wounding things like orcs on 2s with the strike if they're knobs, or the sweep if they're boys, that will really ruin your opponent's day. So yeah, the +1 to wound I think is really handy. So if you've got a lot of orcs in your meta, definitely consider that. The next, again, is around survivability. Impulsor is on there because you can give it an invulnerable save. It's just solid at getting you to where you need to be. There's also an argument for like advancing and getting out. Obviously, you can't charge after that, but you can hold an objective. And these guys being a 2 OC apiece, which is something that I've kind of neglected to talk about so far, because they can out OC a lot of things. They can jump out, they can out OC whatever is on an objective and deny primary. And if you do that with the Judicia against like a combat only army, that's going to be a real pain in the backside, because how do they then answer that? They're out OC'd on that objective, they're mono combat, and you've got a fights first super killer unit now on that objective with, I think it's 13 OC, plus maybe you've edged the tank on as well. So that's going to cause a lot of issues. So again, if you've got a lot of World Eaters or less so Orcs at the moment, because obviously they're quite shooty, but sometimes Orcs, no, not really Nids anymore. I was trying to think of combat armies. I mean, other Dark Angels, the Bloodless Angels, they're actually a good example, I think. So yeah, that could actually be really quite solid. Then I saw a really nice little trick that an opponent pulled out of the Vanguard detachment, where they gave a Judicia infiltrate, and they infiltrated him and 6 inner circle companions in just the most annoying position they could. And as someone that was playing quite a heavy combat army, it was just so good at forcing me to play his game. And I look back at that game and I'm like, that's such a good pace setter. And between that and that hard gun line of Centurions, it just goes, right, well, you're playing my game now, mate. Whatever you do, you're dealing with this horrible fights first unit, or you're getting pounded by Centurions. So that was a really nice little innovation there. And I think that's definitely something to think about going forward. And if there's any other enhancements that maybe come out later that can give you infiltrate, or maybe that give you like free rapid ingress, like maybe that's a thing. If they like revamp the like inner circle guys, and these guys somehow benefit from that, like maybe that's the thing, and that could be quite cool for them. Another durable unit for them to support, like maybe they go behind some Deathwing Knights, and then heroically intervene to support them. To be honest, like it doesn't have to be durable; it can be scouts. Like as long as you can bait your opponent to charging it, you've got that heroic intervention threat. And again, like that lets you set the pace of the game. So that can be very, very good as well. And just that threat density, like, yes, here is 2 big bricks of Inner Circle Companions and 3 5-mans of Deathwing Knights, and they're all going to hit you this turn. Now, please deal with all of them. They've all got 4-up invulnerable saves, and we all know how durable Deathwing Knights are. So that is something that's worth bearing in mind. Next. Oh, lovely, very healthy. We've got an example list with some Inner Circle Companions. Now, we are playing the Gladius detachment so that we can have access to advance and charge. But also I wanted some shooting threats this time. So I think this is quite a good fun one. So Azrael, and also I'm going to break my own rule of saying don't put Azrael with Inner Circle Companions because it doesn't get the best out of them, by immediately putting Azrael with some Inner Circle Companions because that was the only way I could fit it in the list. So Azrael with Inner Circle Companions. Now, they are a late game threat. They are not the superstars of this show. However, that doesn't diminish that they are still extremely powerful and extremely choppy, especially with Azrael coming in and ruining your opponent's dreams. Then we've got a captain with Gravis armor with Artificer armor. That's how you build a Catan in Marines on a 40mm base, which some Catan have anyway, which is really great. It's a 2-up, 5-up feel no pain, 4-up invulnerable save, halves damage on a dude that can punch things in the face rather nicely. So he's just cheap and therefore good. Like I think it's like 95 points for something that takes so much more than 95 points to kill. So he's great for just doing actions, being a thorn in your opponent's side. I'm a big fan of that little bit of innovation. JPIs, because JPIs are good. Who'd have thought, right? That's jump pack intercessors for the uninitiated, but jump pack intercessors are awesome. Next, we've got 2 ballistas. They just provide some nice long range firepower. I am edging more towards Predators at the moment, but in this version I did opt for the Ballistus. That needs testing. That might be incorrect. It might be best to go back over to Predator Destructors. Then we've got 2 Deathwing Knights, which is not as good as 3. And this, if I played this list consistently, I'd probably end up dropping stuff so that I could then get a 3rd Deathwing Knight unit in there. But yeah, 2 Deathwing Knights at the moment. Because in all honesty, the constraints of list building, 250 points is quite a lot. When you're trying to be innovative, 750 points on Deathwing Knights is quite difficult to work with. So yeah, just 2 Deathwing Knights this time. Gladiator Reaper, just to ruin your opponent's dreams with some nasty Overwatch. So like, just very shooty. It's going to kill, like, if it positions nicely, or if your opponent mispositions and they're playing like Eldari, it can potentially kill like 2 to 3 units, which is real nice. Like that Top Gun, the Tempest Bolters, all the stubbers, the anti-fly. Like, there's so much in there that could just absolutely rip like little elves a new bumhole, which is pretty good. Like, we don't mind that. It ruins their dreams, and if I've learned anything, it's that I hate Hail Diary. Then we've got Incursors, because they support your shooting elements, so your ballistas, your Vindicators that we'll talk about later, and of course the Gladiator Reaper. And they're just a solid little unit with Assault, ignores cover, sustained on 4/1/1 attacks in combat, and also a Melter Mine, which is not a bad little addition. Infiltrators to screen the backfield, try and make Bridgehead real sad, and sort of any of those other like nasty deep striking armies. Then we've got the aforementioned Inner Circle Companions in a 6 blob to go with Azzy, just to be choppy nasty boys. In the late game, remember, in the late game. Got a unit of Scouts because Scouts are great, and then 2 Vindicators because Vindicators are great. So that's the list. It's a very rounded list. It has agency in your turn and your opponent's turn. It has the ability to deal with stat checks. It has the ability to deal with hordes. And it also has the ability to deal with those finesse armies as well. In my opinion, this is a jack of all trades army. So it's a solid pick if you're going to a tournament. Is it a jack of all trades, master of none? That remains to be seen. And that is definitely an argument that I would make against this list. But I think in its current form, there's definitely some benefits to it in terms of that be aggressive, take control of the game, threats in the shooting phase, threats in the charge phase. Let's ruin some dreams. So I think we've come to the end of this video. So thank you so much for watching. You can now join as a super member because we have monetized the channel. So you can do all that cool stuff now, probably down below somewhere, which is fun. You can support us more. It goes to hopefully building the community more in East Anglia. Hopefully sort of also not just East Anglia, all across the UK as we kind of develop and move forward because it's nice just to see more crows. So it's something that we're really enjoying doing, but now obviously if you like our content, you can send a bit of money our way as well, which is nice. I also have my own Patreon where I post exclusive content for Dark Angels and for other factions as well, which is just like my little space to mess around, post lists that I come up with on the toilet because I get bored otherwise. So, yeah, what else is a man to do? Come on, you gotta have some kind of interest. So yeah, that's something that you can go and do. That's Angelus Mortis. And that's also my coaching service. So if you fancy having a complete moron teach you how to play toy soldiers, come hit me up. I really enjoy doing little training sessions. And to be honest, like I had a mentee win a tournament recently, and I was prouder of them than I've ever been of my own wins. So it's like that was a cool feeling. Apparently it's the proud dad feeling, and I was like, no, still only 26, no kids, thank you. So yeah, if you want some coaching, go over to angelusmortis.com. Actually, it's .co.uk, and you can sign up. Greatly appreciate it. It gives us a bit of time to chat as well if you like that FaceTime. And you can go join our Black Crow Discord. You can go like us on Facebook, on Instagram. We've done a big relaunch recently, so there might be something fun coming up if you go do that. So go do it. And yeah. I really hope you've enjoyed. Give your comments below. Let me know what you want to see in terms of lists next. I think there is going to be a data slate next week. So next week's episode will probably be on the data slate. And like that's kind of initial like, okay, this is what the meta is probably going to look like. This is how we need to adapt. But equally, I thought that the data slate was today. So don't believe me, I'm stupid. But anyway, I really hope you've enjoyed this. And remember, stay loyal, fuckers. And I will see you in the next one. Cheers, guys. Bye.